Hey everyone, and welcome to Meet the Publishers, round 2. So before we start this, I would like to kick this off with an acknowledgement of country. We would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of a variety of proud Aboriginal tribes. That includes the Yugambeh people who are based here in Queensland. We pay our respects to Indigenous elders past, present, and emerging. We recognize that sovereignty was never ceded and that it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Okay, welcome everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Jens and I'm IGEA's Director of Industry and Member Relations. In that role, I act as a linchpin between our game developer members and our association to see how we can best support them with research, resources, and advocacy. And for those who don't know who IGEA is, we're the peak industry association representing the voice of Australian and New Zealand companies in the computer and video games industry. So what is this all about? This is the second webinar in a series of 3 webinars on meeting the publishers/platforms. A little while back, we were approached by Screen Queensland to suggest the Q&A series to support Queensland and wider Australian the industry in Queensland and the wider Australian games industry. And we thought, that's a great idea. We're going to support that. So the idea is to give better access to decision makers from publishers and platforms in times of limited travel and to give you an idea for what they're looking for in a developer. Last week, we've heard from 2 homegrown publishers, Fellow Traveler and Blowfish Studios. And this week, you'll get a chance to hear from an international publisher. Koch Media, or Koch Media, which kind of hurts my heart as someone with a German background, is a German-Austrian media company whose business divisions include game development and self-publishing under labels Deep Silver and Ravencourt, as well as partner publishing and distribution. With over 20 years of experience, the Koch Media Group has positioned itself as one of the premier publishing partners in Europe. And they're represented here today by Roger Clark, Managing Director at Koch Media, but also Chair of the IGEA board. Before I hand over to Roger, for an intro, just a couple of quick words regarding the format of this. Most of you would know this, still worth reiterating it one more time. If you haven't already done so, please mute yourself. And what's going to happen is Roger is going to give a presentation on Koch Media, and you will then get an opportunity to ask questions afterwards. I will monitor these questions here on Zoom, but also on Twitch, and then relay them back to our guest. And that's pretty much it. So over to you, Roger.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, virtually at least, with you all. And as you can see, the whole German theme with the Gamescom hat hiding the lockdown hair. So yeah, we'll stay with Koch Media, shall we? Look, I'm going to step you through a presentation that talks about Koch Media, but also about Embracer Group, because we are part of the Embracer Group, the Swedish listed business that acquired Koch about 3 years ago. And I wanted to give everyone a bit of a flavor of kind of what our parent company's view of the world is and where we sit within that framework, if you like. It's also relevant because we also, whilst I'm the managing director of Koch Media and I look after Australia and New Zealand from a publishing and a development perspective, we also acquire businesses, as probably most of you know, via the Embracer umbrella. So I wanted to make sure that I shared that Embracer worldview with you as well, simply because Embracer is it's a very lean organization, about 10 people based in Karlstad in Sweden, with a real focus on adding value to businesses that it acquires, hence the very light team there. So one of the things that I also do is spend an awfully large amount of time with my colleagues at Embracer, talking about opportunities that might arise here that are, for whatever reason, not a fit for us as a business. And when I come to the end of the presentation, I will talk a little bit about what's important to us, what we look for, both from the point of view of M&A, but also from the point of view of partner publishing. So, you know, what we bring to the table and what it is we think adds value for our partners and also what's important to us in terms of the kind of games that we look at. I'll share my screen now and step through the presentation. If there are questions along the way, throw them in the chat, and Jens can interrupt me. But otherwise, I will rattle through this quite quickly, because I think, you know, a key part of the value that we can kind of drive out of today's session, and that's a mutual value, is really spending some time talking. So I don't propose to spend you know, the full hour on slides, far from it. So I will now share my screen, and hopefully we will see what we need to see. Does that look good, Jens? Have we got that up and running? Perfect. Okay. Perfect. So there we go, Koch Media Group. So let's see if we can get this. There we go. So I mentioned that the Embracer Group is based in Karlstad in Sweden. At present, we have 8 operative groups. So I'll come back to that and talk about that. A total headcount of 8,500 people across largely development and publishing, and I'll come on to talk a little bit about what that means as well. And that's direct employees as well as contract resource that we might be working with from a, you know, a work for hire studio perspective, etc. We have 80 internal studios, and at the moment just north of about 250 games in development. So a whole bunch of things going on, it's fair to say. So just in terms of locations, you can see us there in the bottom right, the far-flung outpost of the Embracer world. But we are pretty much everywhere now. The market cap for Embracer, we're listed as a business on the Nasdaq North in Stockholm, and which is kind of an emerging SME. Well, I'm not sure that we'd be characterized by anyone anymore as a small or medium enterprise, but it's kind of an emerging technology market in Stockholm. And I guess the interesting thing for us is the way in which the business evolved over the last few years, and I'll come on to talk a little bit about that. But as I say, largely now across the whole world, and from the point of view of scale, in Europe, Embracer is larger than Ubisoft, and which, you know, it's the biggest little games company you've never heard of. I think, you know, simply because we operate as so many different business units and operating companies and brands. I think the other thing that will probably hurt Jens as well is the fact that we now have a market cap that's larger than Lufthansa. Sorry, Jens, but that's air travel. So here's the Embracer growth model. So across the top, we talk about accelerated organic growth and inorganic growth that relates to the acquisition of IPs. We have a large number of IPs that we own the rights to, and that we are either working on currently, or are going to be working on, or are sat waiting for the acquisition of more studios and more developers that will allow us to bring these products to market, some of them lying fallow right now, and then the acquisition of publishers. Across the bottom there, you see the kind of organic growth that relates to businesses that are part of the family already, and that relates then to the IPs that I talked about, so the development of new IPs, so and the development of established IPs that have not been to market in some time. So the development of new games, sequels, DLC, and asset care, and then into publishing, distribution, and marketing. as well then right at the end from an M&A perspective, the addition of operative groups, and notably of late the additions you will have seen would be people like Gearbox, for example, Flying Wild Hogs for us, Koch particularly. But again, I'll come on to talk a little bit more about that. But that's our growth model. In terms of our chain, this is probably given the audience talking a little bit about kind of things that of which you're already aware. So IP owner with a portfolio of over 40 game titles, a couple more now. So 60 internal development studio, global publishing capacity online as well as for physical. We have a strong position in most areas of, if not all areas of the value chain as it relates. So we're an IP owner, and we operate within distribution. We have a strong philosophy of believing that physical distribution remains a key channel through which we can deliver content to our customers, and we plan to be in the physical market for the foreseeable future. We think there's real value in that business, and there are plenty of gamers, I think we probably all know some of them, that are comfortable and enjoy consuming physical products, and that's something that's important to us. So we're looking to be one of the last people standing in that space. So coming on now to Koch Media. So we operate a number of different businesses across publishing as well as development. So if I just run quickly around the list of people there. So Koch Media is our publishing arm in Europe, the US, and in ANZ now. We've just opened offices about 6 months ago in Tokyo and in Hong Kong, as we start to build out our footprint in Asia, where previously we've done things remotely. So Koch Media is the publishing part of our business. Koch Films is our movie business. We both produce and distribute theatrical and TV content largely across Europe for the time being, and that remains a really interesting part of our business. And obviously there's plenty of synergies between games development and publishing, and the kind of PDV world and the adjacencies that exist with home entertainment and theatrical products. So we're represented in that space. Gaia Entertainment is our licensed products business. So we work with a number of our partners for whom we publish products in the licensed product space. So we will produce t-shirts, apparel, licensed product generally for them. And we also operate businesses on behalf of a number of publishers that we do not have publishing deals with. We simply work to produce licensed product for them and to distribute that for them, sometimes operating, for example, their web stores. Voxler is a French studio with a real niche focus, and this comes back to our strategy as it relates to acquisitions, both from the point of view of publishing deals, but also from the point of view of studios. We look for opportunities to be additive in terms of our portfolio, to avoid cannibalization, and to look for things that are a complementary fit to where we sit as a business. That, we could probably target that really around the M&A piece. So for example, Vertigo, who are a VR studio, are bringing their expertise to bear across the group, not just from the point of view of the work that they're doing for themselves around their own products, but also now as a kind of subject matter expert, if you like, in the VR space, and as a acting, if you like, as a consultant for the rest of the group. So jumping around the loop there, we've got Flying Wild Hogs, we've got Fish Labs, Dam Buster, Volition, Milestone as owned development studios within the group, Deep Silver, our publishing label, and Raven's Court, another one of our labels, operating in a slightly differentiated space. You know, we have a fair amount of product, it's fair to say, and one of the things that we look to do is to allow products to really breathe and find their own space, and to make sure that we maximize their voice, if you like, in the market. And to that end, we recently announced a third label called Prime Matter that we are positioning alongside Deep Silver and Raven's Court to bring product to market in a differentiated way. So there's a lot of development expertise across the business, and we obviously in the background there are a number of other things happening from the point of view of QA, for example, from the point of view of localization, where we might have a shared services there. I think I might have skipped over Warhorse, our colleagues from Prague, as well, who Kingdom Come Deliverance, I'm sure any of you would know that game. So that's kind of who we are. Jumping now to basically our first 3 years within that kind of Embracer business. We joined in February 2018. Kingdom Come Deliverance launched just afterwards in kind of end of February, beginning of March. 18.2, which was my business, was acquired February in 19, and joined Koch Media at that point, became Koch Media Australia and New Zealand. And then we kind of rolled through a whole bunch of acquisitions and kind of openings. The real takeaway from this slide is simply that when Koch Media was acquired and joined the Embracer Group, at the time, by the way, it was still known as THQ Nordic, which was leading to some confusion with THQ Nordic, our development and publishing business based in Vienna. So that's at the point at which there was a decision made by Lars, the CEO, to rebrand as Embracer. You know, the real takeaway from this slide is simply that Koch Media as a business, when it was acquired, was 25 years old, had been, you know, it was the #1 third-party publishing partner in Europe, and a leading partner publisher in the US. And joined the Embracer Group, and since then has gone from strength to strength. So you'll see some of the acquisitions, for example, Warhorse, which was a fairly significant acquisition for us. You know, we see Flying Wild Hog in November of 2020, 3 studios based in Poland. There's some significant growth that you'll see there across that 3 years. So if we talk then about what that means from the point of view of people. So in February of 2018, the business was 770 people, and this is Koch Media specifically. We've stepped away now from Embracer into the business that I work in. So 770 people, and you'll see there was a fairly strong publishing bent at that point, with 400 people in publishing and 328 in studio, only 3 studios. And at that point, then we jumped to 21. So again, 39% growth in terms of headcount, 1,070 people. That includes organic growth as well as acquisitions. So we moved from 3 studios to 4 studios, from 10 publishing offices to 13, ourselves included. And then film and merch, we were still a single business with Koch Films. We then jumped to February 2021. Then we include organic growth as well as the M&A business. We moved to 1,900 employees. That's 10 studios, 14 publishing offices now, and 4 businesses within the film and merchandising space. Yeah, the film business, we acquired Solar Media. But from the point of view of the interesting aspect, or the more interesting aspect for the games business and for our publishing business, one of the key things that we believe that merchandised product, licensed product brings to the table is a reason for gamers to continue to visit stores. And we know that our customers, our consumers really enjoy kind of flying the flag, wearing t-shirts, or buying pop vinyl, or doing all the things that gamers like to do. And that's one of the reasons that we chose to move into that space, because we think it's an interesting avenue to continue to really surface product with our consumers. We know that discovery is one of the challenging aspects as we pivot towards digital as an industry. Discovery on platform can be quite challenging, and being out there in the physical world and sharing, we sell titles, we don't sell formats, and merchandise product, licensed product is an aspect of that work. So just to jump forward now into where we sit, we've just actually broken 2,000 employees. So the studios are the kind of lighter blue color. I apologize, it's a bit of a dark slide, a bit of a dark chart, but we've got Deep Silver, Volition, who are based in Champlain in Illinois in the US. They're our studio looking after Saints Row, which I'm sure some of you will have seen announced recently at Gamescom, and hopefully seen the trailer. It's looking great. We've got Voxer in France, who work with our Let's Sing titles, which are pretty niche and do a really interesting business. They're a perennial favorite with many of our customers. Vertigo Games there, who are our VR studio in the Netherlands, a recent acquisition. Deep Silver, Dambuster in the UK. We've got then Flying Wild Hog in Warsaw. We've got 3 offices there, so Warsaw, Krakow, and Rostov. Then Warhorse in the Czech Republic, we already spoke about, and Deep Silver Fish Labs in Germany. We've also got there a couple of blended pieces with Milestone in Italy, who are a studio who currently do their own publishing in certain territories, although there are certain Koch Media offices, ours here in Australia included, that publish their titles, things like MotoGP and Supercross, for example. We then, you can see the sales offices. I don't need to step through those for you, but the moral of that for potential partners and existing partners is the footprint that we have, and the ability to bring local insight, local knowledge, local differentiation to the mix when we talk about publishing products on behalf of our partners, which is a real difference, I think, that we bring to the table, that particular blend of a global footprint with a very focused and targeted local ability to execute on taking titles and products to market. So into our key business. So we're a global developer and publisher. We've talked about that. That's our own product, our own IP. You know, we're not just publishing products for partners. You know, we have skin in the game with our own products, and that, you know, gives us the worldview, if you like, of having walked a mile in partners' shoes and potential partners' shoes, because we know the challenges associated with bringing a game to gold and getting things ready, and knowing, you know, the challenges and some of the opportunities that sit within the publishing business, and you know, whether that's about the marketing mix, whether it's about, you know, community management, whether it's about working with influencers and to maximize products. Those are things we do for ourselves, as well as being a leading global publishing partner, and really working with our partners to maximize their products and to deliver the best outcomes, both commercially and from the point of view of the IPs themselves for our partners. And then less interesting for us as a discussion today, but our European films business, you know, some of the things that we've done of late, we were able to secure distribution in Europe, for example, for Parasite, which was a really nice title to be able to work on and take to market. So just in terms of where we sit, in terms of those internal studios, we've already covered that off. There are, it's fair to say, sat behind that, and this is, you know, kind of the message I think for people today that I'd want to share. Sat behind those studios, we also have operations, shared service operations in the areas of things like QA, localization, ratings. So we've got a games as a service, for example, and kind of the management of games as a service internally. So those services exist because we need them internally, and they are things that we share with our partners as and when that's something that makes sense, and it's something that can bring value to the relationship that we have with partners from the point of view of their products. So just in terms of the things that we work on, some of the things that are kind of important to us as owned IP. So Metro Exodus, Saints Row, Dead Island, Kingdom Come Deliverance we talked about, and then, you know, some products that are more specific in terms of their target audiences. So Arizona Sunshine, Iron Harvest, MotoGP 20, which is a incredibly strong franchise for Milestone, and delivers a really challenging gaming experience. If you haven't played it, I'd recommend trying it. It's quite interesting. Let's Sing we've already spoken about, and then, you know, some of the things that, you know, are, I think, speak to the kind of breadth of the portfolio. Shenmue, for example, Outward, and Time Splitters, you know, some real perennial fan favorites, as well as one of my secret kind of pleasures, Red Faction, not of late, but certainly, yeah, a game I've played and enjoyed, and I think a lot of gamers have too. So we've got a whole breadth of brands and IPs within the Koch Media specific portfolio, not just within that kind of overall Embracer family set up. So just in terms of, and I'm going to wrap up in about 2 seconds, just in terms of what, you know, where we sit, you know, in terms of M&A, you know, for us, it's about building a good, mutually beneficial business case. It's about doing the right due diligence and asking the right questions, and just as importantly, having the right questions asked of us. it's focusing on key areas to discuss what the real opportunities are. You know, it's about thinking about how we can help. You know, the way in which we approach the M&A aspect of our business is really to ask a lot of questions and to understand as much as we can about the businesses with whom we might partner, because we're, you know, just to kind of skip around a bit, what we're looking for is a mutual commitment. We're looking for a long-term relationship. You know, there are not many of our existing partners with whom we've only ever published a single game. We tend to enter into partnerships, and I call them partnerships rather than necessarily relationships or kind of business deals. And we look to make sure that when we acquire a business, the management stays on. I'm a case in point. You know, we want to acquire and we want to talk to businesses that feel like sometimes they're perhaps not as well resourced as they could be, and they're not able to fully realize their vision. And, you know, those kind of discussions are the ones that we enjoy having. We characterize ourselves, and I think our partners would largely agree that we are professional and that we turn things around quickly. You know, the principles of the M&A piece, some of this I've touched on already. You know, there is it's a personal conversation. You know, this is not send an email to a mailbox and, you know, see what happens. There is very much a personal involvement on the part of, you know, not just me from the point of view of Australia and New Zealand, but the other publishing office senior leadership, as well as then the biz dev team who are based in Munich. Again, we talked about the parent company piece with Embracer, where if there isn't a fit for us, sometimes there can be a fit elsewhere within the organization with one of our sister companies. You know, our move into the Embracer world has not changed in any negative way the way in which we work with our existing partners that were partners, you know, prior to the Embracer acquisition. In fact, it's strengthened our relationships and has allowed us to bring on board some newer partners. So we've continued as previously. The other thing is to, you know, from the point of view of both the Koch Media view of the world as well as the Embracer view, you know, we are ambitious, you know, and respectful of those relationships that we commit to, and that I think is also signaled by the way in which the business is growing. Yeah, and I think that's, you know, really a testament to the philosophy that Lars, who's the CEO, brings to the table and brings to the discussions, negotiations, and the deals that get done. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. So I will stop the share, not stop the steal, stop the share, and throw it open to anyone who's got any questions or thoughts or would like to know anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, thank you very much, Roger. Really, really great overview there and some fantastic IPs. I very much enjoyed Red Faction as well. Back on the Xbox 360, had an absolute blast with that one. Also, good reminder that I need to start playing Shenmue 3. I think I need a bit of a break after 1 and 2, but some really, really great titles there. So here's the opportunity to ask a couple of questions. Chuck them in the chat. I'll relay them back to Roger, both here on Zoom and on Twitch. Someone's saying Red Faction 2 was a big part of my childhood. There you go. We're not the only ones. All right. I guess maybe while people make up their mind, one of the questions that came to my mind is there a certain sort of threshold in terms of studio size that you're looking for? You know, we might have some indies here on this webinar today who are like, hey, that sounds already great, you know, but am I ready to join the group? Like, you know, is there a certain threshold that you're looking for in terms of commercial potential? What are some of the criteria there?
The answer to that is it depends. And I know that's not a great answer, but it depends. It depends on the nature of the studio. It depends on the vision they have for their game and for you know what it is that they think we can help with, whether it's, you know, about funding, whether it's about expertise, whether it's a project that's further down the road and they're looking for help with publishing, you know, whether that's, you know, working with platform holders, whether that's about the marketing or the community management or about shipping boxes. So it actually does depend, and I kind of touched on it, I think, during the presentation to some extent. What's interesting for us is why there is a difference with what someone brings to us. And that difference could be, it could be about the game itself. It could be something that differentiates itself from what's out there in the market. It could be the due diligence that's been done from a commercial perspective in the background to identify who the target audience and consumer is. And there's a robust business case that sits behind that that says, here's why my product is going to be great and is going to be commercial. It could be that it's a technology like with Vertigo, for example, like VR, where we lack expertise. And we look to businesses that we acquire to come into the organization, not necessarily simply because we think we can monetize their business. And, you know, this is about, from their point of view, the value that we bring. There are a lot of options out there. You know, the market, particularly since the announcement of the DGTO, has been swamped with people looking for Australian businesses to acquire, looking for Australian product to publish. I mean, if you take a step back for a second and you think about some of the businesses that are in Australia currently, you know, you had, I think Ben from Blowfish spoke last week. You know, you're talking about businesses like Blowfish, businesses like Mighty Kingdom, you know, Australian League of Geeks. You know, there are too many, and I don't want to offend anyone by not saying their names, but there's plenty of them. They know who they are. But when you think about those businesses, they've been operating in a global landscape with a 30 or 40% disadvantage in terms of the money that they're spending. So $1 spent by an Australian business prior to the DGTO was actually, you know, 70 cents or 60 cents in Canada or in Germany or in the US or wherever, the UK. So Australian businesses have demonstrated in the game space an incredible amount of creativity, agility, resilience, the skills that Australian development businesses bring to businesses that might look to merge or acquire, or that they you know, that allows those skills that allow them to be successful. That's incredible when you think about the disadvantage that they've been operating under. So the DGTO announcement has meant that the market has become very, very interesting for global players, for overseas businesses, the like of which we haven't seen since before the GFC, when we lost, you know, people like Chrome, for example, from the market. So what we've got now is not just interested publishers and interested development businesses looking at potential M&A opportunities. We've also got VC cash in the mix because, you know, find me another business that says, oh yeah, over the next 5 years, you know, we're going to have, you know, mid to high single digit CAGR in you know, in terms of consumer spend, never gets talked about. So you can see why there's interest, but that, when you look at the market and you look at what's happening for us, we look at Australian businesses and we think about what, you know, how we can help partner and bring value to their businesses, but we also look for that, the value that they can bring. What can they help us with globally? What can they help to talk about with Volition? What's, you know, is it a particular, you know, is it a particular process flow management tool that they've invented themselves? Is it about, you know, the mechanics of mocap? Is it, it could be a whole bunch of different things, but, you know, we're not necessarily simply talking only about the development piece or publishing a product. It's also about how we can bring value to bear as they go about the job of making games, and how they can help us to make better games and make games more effectively and efficiently in a smarter way, perhaps elsewhere.
Yeah, look, thank you very much. Some very good points there. I mean, I know it's a tight metaphor, but the Australian industry really is punching above its weight and always has been. You know, if you look at the history of video games in Australia, it's quite impressive. I mean, dating back to the 1980s, starting with, say, The Hobbit, which was massively successful on the Commodore C64, and it just goes from there. I did a bit of research lately as to how much investment Australia has seen in 2021 alone, and it's about $160 million of foreign investment that has flown into Australian studios. So that is a really impressive number, and you know, with DGTO, I think it's likely that that's just going to increase. So some fantastic opportunities there. We do have a question here on Twitch. Grifflin is asking, at what point in development should a developer start reaching out to a group such as yours?
I think the answer to that is when there's something to show. And when I talk about something to show, a vertical slice is always great, because that's the point at which there's a feel for what the creative vision is, if you like, you know, a discussion about the player journey, what it is that's important. And I think on that, you know, I wouldn't kind of, if I were talking to myself about a product, you know, it wouldn't just be about saying, here's a playable demo, or here's a vertical slice, or here, it would also be about the business case that sits around it. You know, I have seen more pitches than I care to remember where, you know, the pitch is, here is a game that I want to play, and here is the game I'm going to make. And you know, sometimes that singular clarity of focus can deliver something incredible, like Valheim for us, for example. You know, you know, it can deliver. But what makes our job, my job, particularly as I look at products and recommend those products to the biz dev team and to Clemens, who's the CEO of the business, is why we should be investing in this business. What always makes my job easier is to see a well-worked business case. So here is the consumer that will buy this game. Here's why they would be prepared to pay $50, $30, $100, whatever it happens to be, because it's different in these ways. It offers something challenging in these ways, but it's akin enough to these products, which have been successful, that it will attract that kind of audience. That logical step through who's going to play it, why they're going to play it, and why they're going to buy it is the thing that makes it easiest for us. Always, you know, in the back of our minds, knowing it has to be great. So it's that, in a nutshell, I think that's kind of the answer. When there's a vertical slice or it's a playable demo, or, in the case of perhaps more established businesses where there is a legacy or a body of work to build on, and to say, hey, this is what we've done before. This is what we, brought to market. This is what Steam thinks of us. This is what, Metacritic thinks of us. These are, this is what we've done ourselves in terms of self-publishing or at that point, and we're looking for someone to help us to realize this vision. That's also a great place to have a conversation. Hopefully that answers the question. And if not, follow up on Twitch and we'll see if we can flesh that out.
That's exactly right. Let's see if we have any more questions. I can't see anything right now in the chat or on Twitch. So I guess while people can think about some more questions, one thing you've already alluded to is the pitch. You're talking about the difference you'd like to see in developers, what they need to bring to the table, that you'd like to see the business case, who's going to play it, where they're going to play it, here's what they like to pay. Is there anything else that you'd like to see in a pitch that is really, really crucial? And I guess it's a difficult question to answer, given that it depends, but maybe there are a couple of things where like, hey, this is, you got to bring this to the table.
Tough questions for us. Actually,
yeah.
Part of what I think is really important for any product and any developer and any team is to find the right home. And the right home isn't always us. And that, that for whatever reason, it isn't always us. And the sooner that becomes apparent during the process, the better for everyone. And I think, I'd much rather be in a discussion where someone says, what about X, Y, and Z, and asks a difficult question, than I would be in a meeting where somebody just wants a check. Because that, and I have to say, in large part, most of the meetings that I've had in the industry here have not been in that way at all. It's been, a fairly, okay, well, tell me, here's my creative vision. Here's the blinding light of the amazingness that I am going to deliver in 2 years' time. Tell me how you're not going to screw it up. Is kind of the question. How will you help me to manage community? How will you help me to manage my social feeds? What can you do for me from the point of view of working with those more challenging questions? Those more granular questions sometimes are the things that give me comfort from the point of view of knowing that someone is thinking about getting the day after launch rather than just getting to launch, because that's, we're in a ever evolving industry now where, you look at free to play, you look at games as a service, you look at, the days where, you shipped a box or you ticked a box on platform and product went live, we all know that those days are long gone. And that's the other thing I think that's always interesting to hear from a pitch point of view is, what's the plan for longevity?
Really, really good point. And I think that was also something that was stressed in last week's webinar. Fellow Traveler Blowfish Studios brought up similar points in terms of, asking questions of your potential future partner. It's almost like, regard it as a relationship. You gotta live together for a couple of years. This is gonna, it's gonna work out. So make sure there is actually a fit.
And I think to that point, actually, part of, as I said before, we look for partnership. We look for those longer term relationships. And, I think we, in large part, most of our acquisitions have come from relationships where we have published product for someone, got to know them, got to a point where there's been a mutually kind of beneficial and interested conversation about, hey, what if? And that's where, for us, certainly as Koch Media, we've been able to kind of grow our business. So it's not organic because it is acquisition, but it's kind of organic as a consequence of the process.
Cool. All right. We do have some more questions in the chat. Duncan is asking, how important is the distributor to product development? Should products be developed also keeping the distributor in mind?
I mean, look, it's a great question. I think my personal perspective on that is that a project should always start with the game and should always start with the vision of what it is that the creator or creators are looking to bring to gamers. I think the next step that follows that, though, is then asking the really hard question: is anyone going to buy it? And you can kind of think about it from two perspectives now, I guess, Duncan, where you look at either it's a traditional kind of premium product where you are paying an amount of money for it and you need to find out based on doing some research and due diligence, and that's where I think a potential publisher partner can help, because often they have resources and access to data and sales insights that perhaps developers don't. But start with a vision, start with what it is that's important to the team, or to that single person, perhaps if it's a smaller studio, a very small studio. Start with that and then think about, okay, is this just a game that we want to play, or are people going to want to play it? And try and build a case around that. As if we engage with partners early during the development process, then sometimes we will talk about what we see developing within the market as trends. What are players engaging with? What are they spending time on? What is it that they're enjoying? What are they enjoying less? And that can be driven by telemetry, that can be driven by fielding research. There's a whole bunch of things like Newzoo, for example, can deliver all sorts of insights. So during the development process, I think discussions with the publisher about decisions around the product can be helpful. And I think that's a place where the right partner, and again, we're not going to be the right home for every game and the right home for every team, but where you find the right home, I think that relationship can really add value as you go through the development cycle.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. We have one more question here from David, who's asking, what's the biggest challenge for a small studio developing its inaugural ambitious game to get noticed enough to secure a publishing deal? When a studio has a small body of work in its history, but has a continuously evolving and improving game demo, plus a demo and well-planned business case. How do they get traction?
Timing, I would say. And I think that comes back to why sometimes the right, the business with whom you might be engaging or having a conversation might not be the right one. Because part of the process that we go through is assessing the amount of content that we have. And, we don't sign partners or games where we think we can't give them the right level of attention and focus, and we can't cherish them in the way that the teams that are building and developing them do. because that's not acceptable. If that were our product, we wouldn't want that. So part of it is, you know, sometimes is timing. From the point of view of where we sit as a business, we get about 200 pitches a week. So that's, you know, and that is across the board, because, you know, and that's great because we have a reputation as a publisher and a global publisher, and I think as a good partner. But we get about 200 pitches a week, and part of it, you know, is about, particularly with new IPs and with IPs where there will be a lot of work to be carried out in order to, you know, to realize them in the way that would make sense for the development team and for the business that you're partnering with. If we couldn't put the right amount of time into it, if we couldn't do the best job for that game, then we'd probably pass, or at least have a conversation about timelines and so forth. So I think, you know, if all the boxes are ticked, and I think if the things that David's just talked about, you know, if those boxes are ticked in terms of an evolving demo, a creative and new IP, you know, a robust business case, then, you know, it can be about, you know, simply coming back to timing. But it sounds like they're whoever, you know, they're on the right track and on the right path, I would say.
Yeah. Well, you know, as someone who's played the demo and seen it, I think they are. Look, we might have time for maybe one more quick question. Duncan put something here in the chat saying, thanks for the answer. With the scale of Embracer/Koch, how much consumer analysis is undertaken? And as a result, do you have an insight into future trends? What type and themes of games will be in demand for the next 10 years? What do you think? What does your crystal ball say?
I mean, I think we all know we're going to be living in the metaverse by next February. You know, it will be, look, I would not care to speculate on the direction in which we'll be going as a business. I think from the point of view of the industry, though, you know, the things that I look at as evolving trends are, you know, the continued growth of mobile globally, in those developing markets where console and PC is really not, you know, where they're at. So I think, you know, when you look at Activision, for example, and the migration of COD to a mobile platform, I think we're going to see more of that. I think we'll see more and more IP, you know, kind of making the leap across to mobile. I think, you know, I'm keen to see the way in which VR will develop, I think, and also AR. I think that, you know, with some of the backers that we see in play now, Facebook and you know, around Oculus and some of the things that are happening in VR, that's going to be very interesting. You know, once headsets become, I think, cheaper, less bulky, and perhaps wireless, that will start to be really interesting. I think free to play is a key trend that, you know, is gathering pace, and is bringing, I think, a different sensibility to gaming. You know, we talk now really around games as a platform when you talk about Fortnite, concerts, and, you know, the ability for cohorts to socialize on games rather than and game play being perhaps not the primary reason to be there sometimes among us. You know, there are some trends there, I think. I also think, though, that there's been a bit of a resurgence around kind of single player narrative driven immersive games. You know, Ghost of Tsushima, for example, there have been some, you know, so I'm not writing anything off, and I think, you know, I'm keen to see how some of those trends do play out. But my firm belief is we're not quite ready yet for virtual Zuckerberg sat on our sofa going through our photos, or kind of Ready Player One.
Yeah. Do you remember when the metaverse was called Second Life?
Yes, I do. And they're back, by the way. The founder's back. He's doing the rounds of the speaking circuit as we sit here. Yeah.
There you go. Everything all is new again. All right. Look, we've actually come to the end of this webinar. This has already been an hour. Time flies. So look, Roger, thank you very much for your time, for your insights, for the presentation. Really, really appreciate it. Yeah, look, this was the second webinar in a round of 3. Roger Clark talking about the perspective of Embracer Koch Media, I guess bringing more of a sort of global perspective to the table. Next week will be the last webinar in the series, and that will be with Nintendo. Nintendo of Europe are going to talk about what it takes to get on the Switch. So what does it take for your game to join the likes of Mario? And that's going to take place a little bit later in the day at 5 p.m. because, well, they're based in Germany, and it'll be early in the morning. So I'll send out a reminder about that one. But until then, thank you very much, Roger, for your time and your contribution.
My pleasure, and thanks to everyone who tuned in and for the great questions. Thanks all.
All right, everyone. Take care and see you next week. Bye.